Hello, 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 everyone. My name is Nicole White. Thanks for stopping onto this channel. I am a rapid transformational hypnotherapist, as well as a holistic health coach, artist, many other things. And I have Tiffani on the show. She's going to introduce herself in a minute. And we have a wonderful, wonderful topic for you today. So I'll turn it over to Tiffani. Please introduce yourself. Let the audience know what you'd like them to know.
Hi, I am Tiffani Cappello. I am also a rapid transformational hypnotherapist and a life coach specializing in transforming the mind. And I spent 15 years in a fundamentalist religious cult. So I think this gives me a unique perspective on understanding how everyday normal people can become completely brainwashed into believing something that's totally not true. And we typically look at people come out of cults and we think, my God, how could they be so stupid? But these aren't stupid people. These are people just like you, people just like Nicole. Anyone can become brainwashed. And I guarantee you that right now, every one of you believes things that are not true. So how that affects your life will depend on the nature of what it is you believe.
Wonderful. So let's start off with some information, a little background, a little story about how you were born into this cult, and what were some of the key things that started making you think about, whoa, something's not right here?
Yeah, so I actually wasn't born into it. I was born in an everyday all-American dysfunctional family. So my mom being an alcoholic, there were some issues there. My dad got custody of me. I think I was about 7 or 8 at the time. So there was a lot of, not a huge major childhood trauma, but a lot of childhood trauma. And so that left me just feeling like I had this void, like I didn't quite know how to live. And when I got married, I was really concerned. I thought, I'm not sure how to be a mom. I want to do everything right. I had a high level of perfectionism. And so I just began to search for the truth. And there's a bunch of people offering up various varieties of the truth everywhere. And so I started out, me and my ex-husband, going to a particular church and just sifting through it. But my main mindset was that the Bible was the inerrant, infallible word of God. That's what I believed at that time. And being absolutely infallible, it was, very important to me to find the correct interpretation of that. Well, no one agrees on that. And if you read it real thoroughly, you might figure out why. It's easy to draw different conclusions. So I was just very adamant I would find that truth. So I was kind of like, if you've heard the analogy of frog slowly boiling in water. So people just don't usually jump right into a cult. They either inch their way in slowly, or they enter into a cult and the people are so loving and kind that they meet a need within that individual that the person thinks, my God, this is what I've been looking for my whole life, to be treated like this, to be loved like this, to be accepted for who I am. So for me, it was the frog slowly boiling water. I kept increasingly going from one church to another, seeking holiness, purity, wanting to live the best life, wanting to stick very strictly to the scriptures. And eventually I just got into extreme religious group, even groups where women covered their heads as a sign of submission. So I ended up in the end in the Independent Fundamental Baptist. Now, if anyone's listening and they're Baptist, I'm not saying that all Baptist churches are cults. Mine definitely was. There's many clear signs of being in a religious cult.
What are those?
They tend to be very controlling. So they're telling you how to live your life on a minute scale. And here's the real key factor.
Some details of that. Like, what were some things that they
were
telling you?
I would say, if I'm honest, even from the very start when I started going to church, there were cultic elements. Cultic elements exist in a lot of mainstream evangelical churches. So I'm not saying every church, okay? But in a lot of mainstream evangelical churches, you'll find tiny little shreds of cultism. So as I moved, the churches I attended, I think, became more cultic.
Give us some examples for people who may not know, have never experienced that. Like, what are some things that they specifically told you or hinted at that you feel are cult-like?
The main thing, the main cult-like element is we have the truth and all of those poor people out there don't. Okay? And it could be a denomination saying, our denomination is right. And all those other Protestants or all those other Catholics or all those people who aren't independent fundamental Baptists, it's so sad for them. And that could even be carried over to the extreme where it was with the last church I was in, where it was taught that, we are the only right church probably in a 3-state radius, because all of these other independent fundamental Baptist churches are not 100% teaching the truth. They're all polluted by sin. So that was a key element. We have the truth, and it's almost like an elitism. And then another key element is just, I lost my train of thought. That happens once in a while. So let's just focus right now on that elitism, just believing that we have a corner on the truth. So that means that you don't want to read other books that might give you a different opinion. You don't want to associate with other people who call themselves Christians because they have a different opinion. So you put up this wall, this bubble around yourself to protect yourself from error, because you were taught that the devil prowls around seeking whom he may devour, and he masquerades as an angel of light. And this is a common teaching.
They don't even want you hanging out with other people outside of the cult or the church when it's this cultic-like atmosphere.
Yeah, one of the key elements of a cult is that they will tell you the only reason you would have a friend outside of our group or our denomination is to proselytize them and win them to the fold. And this is very common. I mean, you'll find it in mainstream denominational churches, and it's called the doctrine of separation. I am supposed to separate myself from the world, and that includes the people that don't believe like I do. Anyone who doesn't believe like I do is a problem.
Yeah. I actually had a process where someone was trying to indoctrinate me. I'm not going to name what they believed in, but they were basically saying, we're it. And if you get in now, you might be able to slowly work your way up to being, getting into some kind of heaven. And everything in my body just lit up, and it was like, oh my gosh, I got to run. And this was coming out of an internship that I was doing, and I wanted the job there. And basically part of getting the job there was also becoming part of their church. And I mean, I was like, oh no. But that's fascinating.
Yeah, smart you. And so, like, within our group, another thing that happened that I don't think happens really commonly except in the more extreme cultic churches is to be publicly called out on a regular basis. So it was frequent that people would be mentioned not by name from the pulpit. The pastor and his wife would come over for dinner and then say, some people feel that teaching their children writing is more important than memorizing Bible verses. They're not prioritizing the Word of God in the lives of their children. Of course, he had just been to my house. He saw my writing curriculum. I was a homeschool mom. So those sorts of things occurred very frequently. Or he might make a little shot at those people that drink energy drinks instead of relying on the Lord, and you would know that he was talking about so-and-so over here. And so public shaming was a huge element, and they would preach about every aspect of your life, and you were expected to be at church Sunday morning, Sunday evening, and Wednesday evening. And if you got sick, unless you had you were debilitated and, couldn't get out of bed, you were expected to be there because the church is the priority above anything else.
So what woke you up to something's not right here? I need out.
Well, one of the things is I started to get a little annoyed by the good people in the church getting called out like that. And I noticed if you left the church, these horrible things would be preached about you after you left. And dire warnings were often given about people who walk away. Well, that family, they walked away from the church. And it wouldn't always be our church. It would be these smattering of churches throughout the United States that were part of the IFB that were supposedly right churches. And there weren't very many of them in the pastor's mind. So, this family left and the guy died of a heart attack 3 weeks later. Proof. This is what happens. And they would preach that joining a church is a covenant. So it's as strong of a covenant as marriage. In Christian communities, getting divorced is generally very frowned upon. So, and he would talk about divorcing your church, breaking that covenant is a serious offense in the eyes of God. So you are now under God's judgment. So
what did you learn from this experience? Like we were talking about this earlier. What are some of the things that you learned coming out of this cult, this church?
Well, I think the main thing was I began to notice that I was psychologically falling apart. And I was seeing, I've had 7 children. So that was part of what we believed, have large families, almost raise up warriors to win people to Christ. And so I was seeing my marriage wasn't that great. It wasn't terrible. There was no abuse or anything like that. But the ideas about women being subservient and having no rights were affecting my marriage. So our beliefs basically kind of destroyed any chance we had for a good marriage. And I'm watching this happen to other families. I'm watching the women in the church particularly suffer from massive amounts of stress-related health issues. I saw my own daughter, my oldest daughter, suffering with a lot of stress and anxiety and emotional issues and health problems. And I'm just barely holding it together. And no matter what you did, it was never right. I mean, you think, I'm doing pretty good. And then you go to church and hear a sermon and you were sure to hear of what you were failing at. It was a constant atmosphere. It's another component of being in a cult. They use fear and they use guilt and shame to manipulate you. So
where else are we seeing that in the world, Tiffani?
Yeah, we are seeing that in polarized political type communities. Matter of fact, and people don't recognize this, I think, because they haven't come out of a cult, but many political organizations and groups operate pretty much like religious cults. We have the truth. Everyone out there is wrong. If you don't believe the way we do, you don't see the way we see things, you're an idiot. You're a moron. You're deceived. And it's quite shocking for me, especially this, I think never in the history of, maybe I won't say that because I haven't read all history, but since I've been alive and I'm 51, I have not seen as much polarization as this past election, and is people just literally despising and hating one another. And from someone that came out of a religious cult, it's very disturbing. And I run a support group online called Former Fundamentalists. We have about close to 1,000 right now, ex-fundamentalists who congregate in this community. And it's funny because even though it's a very diverse group. I've got Christians, I've got atheists, I've got liberals, I've got conservatives, but all sorts of people. The one thing we really agree on is just how much, these super polarized areas of the political spectrum kind of look at each other like enemies, and they have the same cultic elements that we saw within our various fundamentalist cults. And it's not just people coming out of the Baptist churches. We've got Pentecostals, we've got Jehovah's Witnesses, we've got any kind. Cults can rise up within any denomination. So, there's this condescension.
Yeah. So what can we do about it? I mean, we clearly have this polarization going on right now, and one side believes what they believe, the other side believes what they believe. And you and I were talking earlier, we're kind of in the middle looking at both sides going, oh my gosh, right? We can see the polarization. What do you feel we can do about this?
It's interesting because obviously when I was a fundamentalist, I would have been extremely far right? And then leaving that, I became extremely far left. So I've been on both sides of the political spectrum. Now I'm just pretty much smack right in the middle, okay? But when I was extremely far right, I was always a researcher. Once I started to realize that things I was being taught weren't true, then I became a huge skeptic. So, I saw the liberals lying, and it was easily validated by research, about Republicans. And then when I became a liberal, I saw the Republicans lying about the liberals. And then now that I'm a moderate in the middle, I'm realizing they're both lying. They're both disseminating untruths that you can pretty much validate by doing research. And sometimes you can't validate because you don't have the expertise or the time or the knowledge to be able to pick that apart. So it's a very confusing world that we live in, not to mention the fact that if you have a political position, and you go into any social media platform, you start to Google stuff, that the algorithms in Google, in Facebook and Instagram, wherever you go, Twitter, some of these I'm not even on, they automatically are going to send you what you want to hear. Now, this works great if you have a business you're advertising and your business being presented to the people who are interested in that business. It's not so great if you're trying to honestly learn and research and figure out, is climate change true? Is it not? Are there children being locked up at the borders? I mean, you don't know. So you want to do research, and if you haven't seen Social Influence, is that the name of that? I'm trying to get that right. The new Netflix documentary is called Social Influence, I believe. Where key officials who worked for Google, Facebook, Instagram, where they're discussing how these algorithms send you your specific political viewpoint. If you haven't seen that, watch it. You're not getting balanced information by just doing Google searches. You're being presented with what you already believe. And it's the same as being in a cult. I went to church. We weren't being asked to think. We were presented with what we already believed. And then, obviously, that's what we're going to believe. And you're in a community of people that already believes the way you are. And, everyone's validating what you believe and patting each other. Like, you're only listening to radio shows that validate your beliefs. You're reading books that validate your beliefs. You're surrounding yourself with friends that validate your beliefs.
And so what you're saying is that the algorithms are actually set to know you enough to know what your beliefs are already. So that's the only information that you're getting, no matter what side you're on?
Exactly.
That is fascinating. I mean, hear that, folks. So whatever you believe in, it's like you are being led further down that one rabbit hole without seeing what's going on the other side, because you're within that algorithm. That I didn't actually know that piece. I know that there's certain information that you get. I mean, I do know that if I research something, then all of a sudden there's ads popping up for it. But I didn't realize that if you believe something or start to research something in one direction, it will actually start taking you down and leading you towards what they want you to know or believe. Or I do believe that there's an intentional division being created right now. So what can we do? What can we do if we're in the middle, if we're on one side, if we're on the other? Because just like you, I know people who are on both sides, and I'm standing there in the middle going, wow, you're both really convincing. I can see you both believe that you are 1000% right, and the other one is such a moron and so wrong. What can we start to do to open up ourselves to stop this division? Because what I see is that the division itself is what's really hurting us. I mean, families are being torn apart. Families, friends, people in businesses. So many people are being torn apart more than ever, it seems, because of their beliefs. What can we do to kind of come back to the middle?
Well, speaking from someone who was 1,000% believed I was right on everything, and then learned I was so profoundly wrong. So there's a humility that needed to settle down on me. So I'm almost uncomfortable, like, being dogmatic. So I will often say to people, I eschew dogmatism. I cannot stand it. If you ever feel like you're 100% right about what you believe, you walk on dangerous ground, unless it's something that you've directly observed with your eyes. I have a child. I see that it's born a girl. I can confidently say I just had a girl. Okay. But if I haven't observed it directly with my eyes, then there should be that shred of doubt in my mind that the news I'm being presented might not be true. So whatever is the opposite of what you currently believe, you should investigate. You should investigate.
What would you say to someone? So maybe they can hear that, like, yeah, sure, I should investigate. But again, they are confident that they'll just investigate and find out that they're still right. Like, how can we help people open their minds and have a little bit more of a humility towards, let me step into their shoes and understand why do they believe what they believe?
Yeah, the best resource for that is Jonathan Haidt's, I hope I pronounced his last name right, The Righteous Mind, Why Good People Disagree on Religion and Politics. This should be, he's very neutral in the book. He doesn't take sides politically. I don't even know what his political beliefs are, or if he's a Democrat or Republican. It's irrelevant. It's a great book that explains that both, because what happens is people on the right look at people on the left and go, those immoral, stupid idiots. People on the left, those immoral, stupid idiots. That they're both actually coming from a place of morality. It's just a different morality. The way they see the world is different. It's often very much based on how they were raised. People pretty much adopt the political party that their parents had very often. So,
and sometimes they rebel and go to the other side just to rebel.
Yes, exactly. I was just thinking about that as I was saying it. My mind's going, yeah, I've seen that. So, or they go off to college and they get in with this group or that group. So we're not often making these decisions because we've researched any given topic. We tend to go with, especially if you've polarized yourself to the point where when you pick a radio show, you're only listening to talk show hosts, podcasts, radio shows that you agree with. Obviously, you're going to get skewed, because I can tell you, I can promise you, the left is lying about the right and the right is lying about the left.
Do you actually know? Yeah, do you? And I think that's why I wanted to start this conversation. Do you actually know of anything these days that is more in the middle? Because I honestly right now, and maybe I haven't searched hard enough, it's either one side or the other. And I'll listen to both to get the information. But really why I wanted to have this conversation with you is how do we get to the middle, whether one side is right or wrong? If we are in a mode of understanding, right? And you
said, yeah, when we listen, first of all, we should talk with people we disagree with. Do you have liberal relatives? Can you sit down and have a conversation? Do you have conservative relatives and you're liberal? Can you sit down and have a conversation without yelling at one another? Okay, if you can't,
how do we do that?
Problem.
How do we do that?
Because we spend our entire time listening to that opposite of what we believe so we can argue our point. So we listen to respond and convince. We don't listen to understand. Try just for 1 minute listening to understand. And when you do that, you'll learn a lot,
Give us some tips on how to do that.
Yeah, if you want to know whether racism is as big of a problem, go and talk to people who live in the inner city. If you want to know something, talk to people. Don't always get your facts from the media. Talk to scientists about, climate change, who are pro climate change, who are against climate change. Read both sides. Study both sides. And then when you draw an opinion, you've drawn it accurate. You might still be wrong, but at least you have looked at both sides. The people are terrified at looking at both sides. When I was in a religious cult, it was scary to look outside of my group and analyze other beliefs. We were discouraged from that. Don't do it. Don't listen to those people out there, because your mind will be deceived with their garbage. I see the same thing in politics. Those people are idiots. don't listen to them. Those people are idiots. Don't listen to them.
Let's talk about trigger points, and let's kind of really get into the nitty gritty of how to help folk who may be on one side and they're like, oh, okay, this conversation has opened my mind. I want to go have a conversation with a relative on the other side, because you can go in with the thought, oh, okay, I'm going to go in, listen for a little bit, and then give my opinion, expecting them to listen. But honestly, first, you probably have to be in a place where you're open and listening. And maybe the point is not to go in to win the conversation, but to understand their side and open the door a bit to be able to start to have the conversation. And that might take having to just listen a few times until that person feels heard enough to where they can then maybe open space for you to talk.
Well, in the cult, our religious views and teachings were more important than people. Mm-hmm. And to many people, their politics are more important than their family members, their friends, their spouse. I mean, people are getting divorced over who they voted for in this past election. So their main value, their key value is not relationships. It's ideas. Right. And how sad is that? Our relationships should be more important than our ideas. So when you go to speak to your relatives, your friends, when you go to listen to what the other side has to say, your main goal should be relationship. How can I enhance and preserve this relationship? You know, right. How can I really listen?
Right. Even if that means you're feeling uncomfortable with the information coming in, but you're uncomfortable with that information coming in because it's not what you agree with. And I believe that trigger is to be like, no, you're wrong. This is how it is. Here's my proof. But, let's come up with some like really good tactics for people to feel the uncomfortableness maybe of what somebody else is saying and be like, okay, I don't have to believe what they're saying, but can I take it in and try to understand where they're coming from so that I understand them better? I can go off and do some research and then maybe come back at another time and have questions or talk to point. Because what people are now doing, like you said, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm right, you're wrong. And all that's creating is war.
Yeah. And people don't change their beliefs easily. Our mind is sort of wired against that. But one of the core principles, I teach something called the core life principles in my coaching practice. And there are 12 principles and beliefs, they're basically beliefs, that when you adopt them, it transforms your life. So one of those principles is just people do the best they can with the knowledge they have. So just like you are really invested in the things that you believe are right, those other people are too. And there's a reason they came to believe that. Like, if you go into the inner city and you see a 11-year-old child who goes and steals a sandwich from a local store, and you watch him run out of the store and you see him knocking to an old lady on his way out, you think, oh, how terrible, that kid. He doesn't believe in working for his food. But then you find out that his mom is disabled. She has cancer. She's a single mom. Some reason they're checked, they can't get to the food bank, whatever. Then suddenly your eyes open and you think, gosh, that's all he knows. He's doing something for his mom, and you see him through different eyes, So understanding that principle, people do the best they can with the knowledge they have. So you, coming from your political perspective or coming from a knowledge base that you have and learned in your mind, that individual is coming. If you can get together and talk and communicate and listen. Now, if you want to listen and the other person doesn't want to listen, you got a problem. So communicating with that individual, it's like we are coming from, so you can either say to yourself, our relationship is so important that we're not going to discuss politics. Now, I have friends like this. I still have extremely religious and very conservative friends who probably go to churches that I would consider cultic. And they think I am on my way to hell because I'm no longer part of that religious group. And they will tell me. And I will say, if we continue along these lines, we probably won't remain friends. I value friendship. So we can either agree to be friends and agree to disagree on this. That means that we never come at each other trying to convince the other person that they're right. And my best friend believes on a lot of things different religiously and politically than me. And we get together and we just don't discuss those things, because if you think about it, there's so many more things in this world. But in religious cults, you put your religious views above anything else in life. They're more important than people, you know? And people do the same thing in what I call political cults. Now, you know, the sure sign that you're in a political cult, whether it's an actual group or just a mindset that you've been sucked into the vortex of, is when your politics are more important than your relationship with the people in your life, your family members, your spouse, your children, your neighbors, your best friends, when it becomes so preeminent that you are going to sever ties, or even worse, treat people cruelly. And the amount of cyberbullying, this is one thing that really gets me. So we teach our kids bullying is wrong. So bullying is wrong. You know, I've told my kids, if I ever find out that you bullied another child at school, it's going to be the worst day of your life. Okay, that is the one thing you must never do. Like, I'm not a perfectionist parent. I expect my kids to make mistakes. They're going to get bad grades from time to time. They're going to maybe do something wrong. But to victimize another human being, and I've explained to them why this is so wrong. And as far as I know, none of my kids have ever bullied anyone. Okay? But now, and it's not just me. Most parents teach that to their kids. They even tell that to their kid who's a bully. Most parents don't approve if their child's a bully. Okay, but then what do we do as parents? We go on social media and we pick the people that we disagree with politically, and we mock them, we make fun of them, and we say bad things about them. And here's the thing, if that were done to your child or another person below the age of 18, it would be called cyberbullying or sexual harassment or all of these terms that we use that we all go, you know, and we're all speaking out against bullying.
Yeah.
But we're doing it as an adult, and we're setting that example for our kids just because someone disagrees with our political beliefs.
Right. And I really, that's such a great point, because I see it. And what's difficult for me is that I see one side, so let's use the term bully, one side bully or put down one side. And because there's a big group of people all agreeing, they're getting more energy to do that. But then when that group who's bigger than this other group see one or two posts about a bullying on the other side, they all attack that person like, how dare you? And I don't want to give examples, but we all know what we're talking about. We all do it. It's very easy to get into a clique that believes what you believe and believe that you're right, they're wrong, to be able to put out mocks and memes and funny, you think is funny, but it's really bullying that person or that group or that belief system.
Yeah.
But it's really become, you can dish it out, but you can't take it. And I grew up in an environment where certain things were dished out. And when I came up in front of it and dished out a little to the other side, oh, I stepped over the boundaries. It is not okay to make fun of one thing, meanwhile I'm getting made fun of for all these other things. Yeah. So how do we come to neutral with that? How do we really see that anything that we put out that's destroying someone, or the intention is to destroy something or something, is really this one-sidedness, and you're not even looking at the other side of it. And then you get completely offended by the other side doing the same thing that you're doing.
Yeah. And that's interesting from someone who's been on the extreme end of either side of the political. And I would say I was not extreme in every area on either side, but you know, typically the far right is very anti-environmentalism, but having had a child with a birth defect that was caused by an environmental exposure, who somebody died, I became more interested in chemical exposures and worker safety and what's being put into our water and what's being sprayed on our vegetables. So this is just my own personal story. And most people, I'm just like most people, this is understanding how the human brain works. It does not want to let go of what it believes. And until, the pain of remaining the same becomes worse than the pain of changing your beliefs, you tend to stick with what you believe. And so suddenly I was forced to see the other side. Mm-hmm. And that's when I thought, well, maybe there's some validity to the fact that there might be some environmental issues that I want to investigate. So this is what usually it takes for someone to make that shift. But I think truly, if you want to overcome this tendency in yourself, is to be willing. What are those issues that you are really feel strongly about? Research both sides. Right. And I can almost guarantee you that the truth on most things, I won't say everything because I don't like dogmatism at all, the truth in most things lies somewhere in the middle. And that is a phrase right. I teach my children. The truth usually lies somewhere in the middle between the two extremes. And if you find yourself in any extreme position in anything, not just politics or religion, beware, okay? Beware. Yeah. And always look at the other side before, if you're going to pick between two surgeons, because you're going to have an open heart surgery and you're given a choice between two surgeons, what are you going to do? Are you going to pick the surgeon that agrees with you on religion or politics? Or are you going to pick the surgeon that has the best track record for getting you through surgery alive? Okay? If you're going to make an educated decision, you're going to pick the more skilled surgeon. So we look at both sides in other areas. When it comes to politics and religion, we're like, nope, I'm not considering it. If you're a liberal, that means you're an idiot. If you're a conservative, that means you're an idiot. I'm not listening to you. I'm not reading your books. I'm not, I made it a point to listen to people I totally disagreed with, because suddenly once I came out of that cult and I no longer was operating under the illusion that I was incapable of being deceived, and then I realized that, gosh, 90% of everything I believed was wrong. That is extremely humbling. Okay, most people, this way it gives me a unique perspective, and those people in my support group, unique perspective on the world that few people have. And I wish, we could get out there and talk about it more. Look at what you believe and look at the other side. Then when you come to a conclusion, you can feel really damn good about it.
Right. Well, let's talk about I want to hit on the news, and I also want to hit on social media, because not everyone's on social media, but a lot of people are. And again, it's very easy, like being in a clique in school or in a religious environment or belief systems. What I see online a lot is one side really making fun of or bashing or, all these things to the other side. And what I keep trying to think about is, how do we become neutral? It doesn't mean you change the way that you think, but how do we stop this, basically cyberbullying stopping? And when you put up a post that is basically saying so-and-so is, this, that, or the other thing, you are coming from a judgment that you are 1000% right. And then, I can't tell you how many arguments I see online. Someone will post something and it's basically a blanket statement about how one side is wrong and one side is right. And then you start seeing these fights in the comment, and no one's getting anywhere. We're just fighting. And one thing I want to say is they've done studies where people at the end of their life, they look back and it's like, what do you wish you would have done? None of them are like, wish I would have worked harder, made more money. It's all about relationship. And now more than ever, we see these relationships being broken apart because, now that we're talking about these political and these religious views. So how do we give people some substantial things that they can start with, like starting to listen, like starting to look at sources opposite of what their belief systems, but how can we start doing this more peacefully, for instance, within social media, where we're not getting on the bandwagon and either ganging up on one side or even fighting? Like, I find I have to just kind of ignore a lot of it. I find like if I were to say something like, ooh, that wasn't nice, why don't you be neutral? That's going to start up they're saying, well, these are the reasons why I say that and why I believe it. So what is your opinion on what we can do now to stop this divide and to start coming back together more?
Well, first of all, I don't know that I would love if someone out there listening to this has had a political opinion changed by an argument on Facebook. I want to know about it. I actually have. I posted something. I remember what it was. And I had a woman say, and she just called me out. She said, what you said was kind of almost like cyberbullying. And I thought about it. And I thought, you know what? You're right. I said to her right there publicly, you're right. It was inappropriate. I thought it was funny, but it wasn't funny. When I think about it, no, this is not the kind of example I want to set to my children. Now, why can I do that? Not because I'm better than people, but because I came out of this cult. I don't come with the assumption that I'm always right. So recognizing, first of all, that you just might be wrong, and I try desperately to avoid posting things that are really strictly political. It's not doing a damn bit of good. You're just preaching to the choir. You upset the people who disagree with you, and the people that agree with you go, yeah. Okay. I said that anything's terribly wrong with it. I mean, there are issues like that I am really strong. And I've gotten arguments on Facebook myself. I've posted things myself. So I'm not innocent here either.
The posting of one side or another isn't going to stop. But how do we, I know we both know this, but how do we share with people a different way to word it? Even if it's I know you may not all agree with me, but this is my belief. If you have proof of it being the other way, please post a link. I keep trying to think of, when I look at social media, because people that's what the platform is about. How do I share who I am? How do I share what I'm thinking? And right now, as we're talking in December 2020, this whole thing is still huge. So how do we open it up to have the conversation, but with this humility, with this openness of, I really want to make fun of this one person, but I know it's not appropriate because not everyone believes with me. What are...
Well, I wonder why it's so difficult, people. And I guess I know because I was in a religious cult. And when I was there, I was an asshole, okay? Whenever you go to one total far extreme, you become an asshole. I'm just convinced, okay? And I was an asshole because I just looked with disdain and condescension on anyone who didn't believe. If you can get past that and just say, this person believes, reading The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt will blow open your mind to the fact that people believe the way they do for a reason. It doesn't make them an idiot, okay? They have just as legitimate reasons. They might be wrong, and you'll still keep your political position, and that's okay. You should be able to have a position on something, But there's no reason to talk to someone with disrespect and condescension because they agree with you. If you cannot have a conversation with somebody you disagree with without name calling, without getting extremely angry, without treating that person like crap, you have an immaturity problem, No matter how dogmatic you feel, trust me, there are issues on the political arena that infuriate me. I mean, to the point where I'm just... I'm gritting my teeth, okay? And usually that has to do with anything that involves human rights violations or people suffering because this political party or that political party is passing laws that are causing human suffering. I don't like human suffering.
Right.
And my morality is to alleviate that at all costs.
But we're also perpetuating the human suffering by taking these extreme sides and not being able to listen to one another. So what are some things that we could do, in our personal lives and help other people with, to where when they see something that triggers them and they want to reply back, you're wrong, I'm right, you moron, where they can basically stop. And one, it's is it worth it? And two, can I somewhat step into their shoes and try to understand, why do they believe this? Why do they believe this?
Yeah. Ask yourself if it's a good even use of your time.
Right.
Because I used to think if I just approach people with logic and reason in this area, they're going to go, and it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Some people probably over 50% of people that you say, here's here is my opinion on why you were wrong. And I'm pretty much mostly respectful. Here's my opinion on why you're wrong. And here is some research to validate that.
But
Now,
that's fighting words, because somebody hears what I think isn't right and they immediately go into, well, I need to show you why I am right and you're wrong.
Well, here's the thing. You could present research on any given topic, and you present that and they've got research showing the opposite, because the whole world of research is very, very corrupt, objective, and
let's talk about
it's
that.
very difficult for the layperson. I have a couple friends who are scientists who spend a lot of their time looking at research studies. And sometimes I'll say, hey, what about this? And I'll email my certain friend and he will say, here's why that study is not a very good science study. There's problems with the control group. There's problems with the way they, quantify the research or whatever. So and this is the difficulty we have in our society, is the fact that it's sometimes very, very different. For example, let's take the issue of climate change, okay? I am not a climatologist. So if I decide I'm going to look at this issue, it's very difficult for me, having no scientific background in climate and environment, to decide which side. There's scientists on both sides. Which scientists are right? Okay, so I need to approach this topic with a degree of humility. It's like I'm not an armchair quarterback. Everyone laughs about armchair quarterback. That idiot! I could have done better than that. But no, you couldn't. You're sitting in your chair, 20 pounds overweight, eating potato chips. You've never been a quarterback. You never will be. This is the kind of arrogance that we have. And it's sad. Because how do we know? Sometimes you just have to say, I'm going to look at the research, I'm going to come to the best conclusion I can, but I might be wrong. But what happens is, when you have these polarized political opinions, now what would happen, just theoretically speaking here, if people would just get together and listen to each other? What would have happened if we would just take a singular issue, and instead of getting together and arguing and trying to prove your point like a debate club, we just got together and said, okay, I want to figure out where the commonality is. Where is this person right? Because if you think about it, it's not really feasible that they are wrong about everything they have to say, and I am right about everything I have to say. Even if I think I'm 90% right, don't I want to know where I might be 10% wrong? Mm-hmm. So
And a great example of that, like I deal a lot with food. I've had, a lot of eating disorders. And what I try to do with food, with the classes that I teach, is teach people the middle ground. Let's look at the ingredients. And where most of the world is like keto, no vegan, no paleo, no this. And every diet that's out there will show you the research, will show you the benefits, will show you the people who have had wild success. But on the other hand, what you don't see is the people who have failed each one of those diets, who have felt bad about themselves for not being able to stick to the diet for one reason or another. So, and then the science, right? There are literally, let's take the extremes, right? Paleo versus vegan. Let's just take those extremes. And I'm not on either side. Both can convince you, if they have you in front of them, both can convince you they're right and the other is wrong. So you can listen to a vegan for a day and be like, oh my gosh, I'm 1,000% confident I need to go vegan. And then you can go listen to someone who promotes paleo and you can go, oh wow, they're right. So we really have to come to a middle ground where, like you were saying earlier, where we don't glom on 1,000% to this is right and this is wrong, because there is proof, science, people on all sides saying, I'm right, you're wrong. And then these are like, no, we're right, you're wrong. But if we can come together and just adopt a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and like you were saying, maybe you're on the left about a few things, and then you're on the right about a few things. I feel this is a healthier way than saying, no, I have to be completely this or completely that, because honestly, isn't that a form of racism?
Yeah, and it's the dogmatism that's really the enemy. I think people need to see dogmatism as a dangerous way to think.
Right.
And the food example is fantastic. fantastic.
Yeah. And for those who may not know, what do you feel is dogmatism? Maybe not
I'm
everyone's
100% right, and what I believe is 100% right. It's interesting because but it is human nature to fall into that. I mean, the food example I had chronic fatigue immune deficiency syndrome for 2 years, really bad, 5. I cured myself with a paleo diet, very low carb, and some supplements and stuff to deal with small bowel infections and so forth. Okay. I was a nutritional consultant for years. Then I went keto for various reasons. And now I'm eating plant-based diet. I had some issues on keto that have now become pretty, severe enough that I needed to make that switch. But I'm not dogmatic vegan. I eat fish, So it's interesting because now I have a functional medicine physician, and I interviewed her, actually. She's a great doctor, a doctor that agrees to be interviewed, first of all. I'm hiring you and to govern and manage my health. But I also interviewed her because I wanted a place to send my clients who were having health issues where nutrition and lifestyle would be addressed. So we went for a nice walk in the park. And I said, what diet do you teach your clients? And she said, well, there isn't one diet right for everyone. It depends on the client. Okay. So, some people feel very comfortable going to religious services every week. Other people, that's a disaster for them. So it's okay for us to adopt different lifestyles, whether it comes to eating or other things. It's okay. Yeah. But the problem is when we're dogmatically, my way is the right way and everybody else is an idiot. That's when it becomes a problem. And it's a very, in my opinion, immature way to think. But even presenting that on social media, I think I posted a meme that said, if you vote Democrat or Republican this election, it doesn't matter, you're still my friend, because that's what maturity is. And I thought this was nice. I got ripped to shreds. Anybody that would vote for blank or blank is an idiot, and you're not my friend. Okay. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. So let's talk about where this comes from. Finish your thought. Yeah.
Yeah. But not so many months earlier, I had posted something similar regarding COVID and the stance that I took in those early months. I'm like, if you believe this way and you're doing this, then unfriend me. I was that mad. So you see, recognizing how easy it is to slide into that us versus them mentality.
Right. And I do want to speak to something about this, and I know this could be a trigger point, but it's exactly what we're talking about. Whatever you believe is your right to believe. But what I'm seeing now, like on videos, and again, I'm not putting an opinion out there, I'm showing it as an example, is what we're seeing now on some videos is people who are wearing masks, literally attacking those verbally or whatever, who are not wearing masks. And here's the thing, there are some medical reasons where the mask is more dangerous for some people. And so I don't want to get into if it's right or wrong, but if someone is wearing a mask and someone isn't wearing a mask, why is one person wrong and one person right? And where are you getting this information from? Is it the news, right? Is it mainstream media news? And we're going to talk about this, the brainwashing, the dogmatism. Why is why is it a problem for some of these people when it doesn't actually affect you? And my question is if someone's wearing a mask and going out and verbally or physically attacking someone who isn't wearing a mask, something isn't firing correctly here, because that person is wearing a mask to protect them from the other person, meanwhile getting in their face about them not wearing a mask. And I know this may upset people because you're going to have an opinion on one side or the other, but it proves our point. You don't know what's going on with another person. It's the same thing when driving. I know someone who, anytime someone cut them off or did something, they were mad, they would try to get revenge. For me personally, if someone cuts me off, I'm like, I have no idea what's going on with them, but I am safe. So I'm going to try to get rid of this instead of let this ruin my day. And there is no way I'm going to go and try to harm that person or be like, what are you thinking? because I may just upset them more.
Well,
right?
plus it's just a lack of compassion. I think we need more compassion and empathy.
Right.
In our relationships in general and in society.
Right. So I think our whole point here is whatever you feel is right. And if you're up against somebody who has a different opinion than yours, what can you do? Because we have to be the bigger person first. What can you do or think to where you stop yourself from just reacting to what's going on, that person, that post, the mask, the no mask, the food, the no food, the religion, the no religion, the left, the right, the middle, whatever it is. It starts with you. How can you stop yourself and think, okay, this is my opinion. I have every right to my opinion, but clearly theirs is different than mine. What can I do, right? Because if you want to pick a fight, you're going to get a fight, but you might also be terrorizing somebody else if you try to push your agenda onto somebody else, right?
And we dehumanize others, and that's what
we do
us to do that.
We do. And again,
they become the enemy.
Right. And again, at the end of our life, the things that we're going to reflect on most is our relationship. And sometimes we're triggered, and Tiffani and I know this because of the work that we do with the hypnotherapy, with the RTT, is your trigger towards an issue may not actually be that issue. It's just like if you're in a relationship and somebody does something and you brush it off, but you're not actually dealing with it. And then the smallest thing happens and you lose your bleep, right? You just lose it completely. Recognize it wasn't that one thing that made you lose your bleep, right? It was the buildup of not dealing with it, right?
Well, a lot of times, I think the people that get most angry and most offended often have the most insecurity. I can't be wrong, because being wrong means that I'm an idiot, means I'm not intelligent, I'm not capable, I'm not competent, I'm not enough. And so, for example, someone that believes that their personal worth is tied to their productivity, and so they get cut off in traffic, they're going to be a lot more angrier than someone who thinks, oh, well, I got cut off, now I'm going to have to wait at this red light a lot longer. Things like that. So it's a lot of times rooted in our beliefs. Wherever we have, I heard a podcast the other day. I wish I could remember who said it, but basically the guy was saying that, wherever we have triggers, that's where we identify those places within us that need to heal. So if you're super easily triggered by people that disagree with you, that could be an issue. So what would it hurt you to just treat more people with respect, whether you agree with them or not? How would that harm anyone? Because if you think about it, have you ever changed a single opinion that you ever held because someone called you an idiot, a loser, or disrespected you in some way? But have you ever changed your opinion because someone came and presented you with, calm and loving manner with facts? And if you grew up in a home where you were really criticized and condemned and yelled at, did that really motivate you to change? There's people out there who say, yes, I know. But for the most part, every parenting expert, every psychologist knows that humans do not respond well psychologically to being criticized and told they're worthless. Okay? Most of us struggle with believing we're not worthless anyway. We struggle with not believing we're not enough anyway. To have someone shoot that at us is just a very triggering experience, whether it's coming, you've got the issue of not being triggered by other people coming at you that way. I mean, I do not like to be disrespected. I do not like it. There's a certain ways in which you don't have to tolerate, but if your views, your opinions are being disrespected, you've got a choice. I just don't get as mad as I used to. I've worked on myself a lot. I'm not touting myself as some fantastic individual because of that. A lot of it had to do with being in that cult. But if someone's coming at you, is anything going to be solved by you getting back up in their face and hurling names yourself? No. So to me, I will just say, okay, this conversation's over because you're not respecting me in your tone of voice and you're starting to call me names. So we're not discussing.
Right.
So I will tell people, I'm happy to have a discussion. I do not do arguments.
Right.
And I won't say that I've never, we all are human, okay?
Sure.
But make it your policy.
Right.
I discuss, I don't argue. And the minute it turns into an argument, somebody needs to walk away, because when your emotions are in that high of gear, the hormones and chemicals released in the body are so overpowering. They usually are shutting off that prefrontal cortex. So you don't even have the cognitive ability to reason and rationalize like you normally would. So you need to cool down. The biochemistry needs to settle. You need to be able to think rationally before you're going to be able to come to a reasonable conclusion anyway.
Absolutely. And one of the things that's helped me the most in my relationships is, I'm not going to name names, but if somebody triggers me, I'll just be as clear as I can. And I'll say, I'm really upset right now, or I'm really triggered. I can't continue this conversation right now. Let me process my feelings and I'll come back to it. And I would feel that that's what I want to share with everyone today is see how you're triggered. If you're triggered by a post, if you're triggered by a piece of information or news or science or somebody wearing a mask or not wearing a mask or wanting to put something in their body or not wanting to put something in their body, go inside first. See if you can stop yourself from immediately reacting to the person. Go inside, see what your beliefs are, and see what your intentions are. And this is easier said than done, but over time it becomes easier. Is if you recognize that you're upset or you're triggered, if you can somehow step away from the situation because it's not a fight or flight, you're not actually being attacked, but it feels like you're being attacked. If you can stop, take a breath, understand what it is you really want out of this situation, and then excuse yourself. I have to do this all the time. I'll read a post or something and it triggers me. And if I have nothing positive to add to it, I'll walk away. Because again, I know if I say something contrary to what they're posting, it's going to create a fight. It's going to create I'm right, you're wrong. And I see so much of this. And again, it's not easy. But with practice, it takes time to just think ahead. If I put my response against what they're posting, what's going to happen? Well, there's going to be an argument. There's going to be a dispute. Or if they're in their center, they may not respond at all, which may upset you as well. So the last thing I want to share with folks is stop, right? Just stop. Feel your feelings, acknowledge your feelings, honor your feelings, but also realize if you're wanting to respond to somebody else and it's opposite to what they think, stop and really ask yourself, is this really worth it? Is it really worth it to start this argument, start this fight, or start this divide? Tiffani?
Yeah, exactly. And think about it. Is that how, you have a limited amount of psychological and emotional and physical energy in a day? Would you want to invest that time in something that is going to do nothing but upset a bunch of people? So everybody gets upset. No one changes their opinion. And you've sapped some of the energy out that you could be investing in your children, your partner, your career. It was a complete waste of time. So that's what I began to realize, because I was on social media for a long time being very adamant about it's not because I don't have opinions. It's like, okay, I'll share hopefully sharing our opinions here will do some good. It will make people think. So
and that's all they are.
Yeah.
Right. This is our opinion, that we shouldn't be so animate that we're right and you're wrong, or you're right and I'm wrong, but to literally in some way in your body, in your mind, understand that there is a division going on with the information, and we're allowing this division to take place. It doesn't mean don't stand up for what you believe in. It just means if we can understand where the other side is coming from. It doesn't mean if someone's about to attack you and you know how to save yourself, you pause and go, oh, I wonder why they're attacking me physically. Of course, you defend yourself if it's true life or death or physical harm. But if it's the social media, political, family, religious stuff, just pause for a moment and be like, is this worth it? Like, do I need to go off into my own little world for a little while and figure out why am I triggered by this? Or is there a way I can create more peace or opening in it? And that, because again, I'm so hurt by this time because I see the division and I see so many people who have separated, don't even talk to one another because they're on two sides. Whereas before all of this, they were family, they were friends, and now they can't be. And it's heartbreaking because we need relationships. We need each other, and we do need to hear both sides.
And you need to have friends that disagree with you. If you set yourself off in an enclave, it's the same as being in a religious cult.
There's no growth.
You choose to put yourself into a bubble in a religious cult where everyone agrees with you and you're not exposed to any information. As a matter of fact, it's forbidden to expose yourself. I was criticized and condemned when I was in a cult, and I was told by my pastor, you're going to read your way to hell because you expose yourself to things outside of what is approved by our group. Okay. Now that sounds shocking. When people hear that, they go, oh, that's a title of a podcast I did on the Preacher Boys. If you want to hear more about that, I did a podcast on our Preacher Boys podcast. I did an interview with Eric there and talked in depth about my experiences within the cult and the brainwashing, the psychological damage. But the main, we were taught to preserve our minds, we needed to stay within this bubble. And the same thing is happening with people's political beliefs as well. I need to stay inside this bubble. I will eliminate everyone from my life that doesn't agree with me. Well, I'll tell you, in order to be a truly intelligent individual, you need to be exposed to ideas. It's the reason you have a control group in an experiment. It's the reason why there should be discourse. But we're seeing that opposing viewpoints are less and less tolerated because, oh my God, I've been offended. I've been offended. God forbid that you should be offended by hearing a political viewpoint, a religious viewpoint, any kind of viewpoint that you disagree with. We're like spoiled children in this country. Who can't listen to anyone else but what we've chosen to surround ourselves. It's a very dangerous place to be intellectually, psychologically, socially, to just surround yourself with people who agree with you. You will cease to grow as a person and intellectually. It's the same with triggers. Like I tell my clients, one of the worst things you could do is to take everything you fear, those things that trigger you, and try to stay away from them.
Right.
Because you'll find your world becomes narrower and narrower because you stay away from everything that makes you anxious until, worst case scenario, now you're the agoraphobic who never leaves the house because that world out there makes you so anxious. And I'm not putting down agoraphobics. I've had extreme anxiety myself. It's a big struggle. But it can happen to any of us where so-and-so triggers me. I'm going to avoid so-and-so. This opinion triggers me. And sometimes you have to do that. Don't get me wrong. If there's toxic people in your work environment, sometimes you have to say, I am putting a boundary around myself and I'm keeping certain toxic people out. But there's a difference between someone who is toxic, is condescending, rude, gossips about you behind your back, tries to start trouble, and someone who just doesn't agree with your political viewpoint. Right. Huge difference.
Right. And that's a great point about the agoraphobia, because what's going on now, and again, this could be my opinion and you could disagree with it, but sit within what comes up for you with this opinion. Is there's actually a lot of promotion to become agoraphobic right now. They're telling you everything is dangerous. Meanwhile, the sun is healthy for you. We need community. Yes, we need to stay safe. But my biggest thing that I wanted to get across with this and having Tiffani on and talking about brainwashing and cults and everything is I believe that there is a certain agenda with certain outlets that we listen to, right? News, media, all these things. And it's fine to listen, but we need to minimize it too. So this is a big point that I wanted us to talk on. And I know we have to wrap this up soon because both of us have to go, and maybe we'll talk again because this was such a great conversation, we have to limit the amount of terror that comes into our lives. And so, for instance, with the political thing that's going on, with the corona thing that's going on, if you have the news on in the morning, in the afternoon, you're getting pings, you're getting information all day, all night, you're keeping track of the numbers, you are being fed fear all day long. And what people say, it's like a little bit of cognitive dissonance, is, oh, I'm just staying informed. Honestly, you could get 5 minutes of news from a site and know the information for the day and be informed. And what I find people are doing, because they're home so much, is they are engaging in more and more and more news. It's the same thing being regurgitated over and over and over again. And instead of just hearing what's in your neighborhood, you hear what's in your neighborhood, in your state, in the whole country, in other countries. It's important to protect the one thing that you can protect, which is your well-being, your mindset. And so I would say is that if you're watching a lot of news and you feel like you have to stay informed, you are doing yourself more damage than good. There's more stress, there's more suicides, there's more depression, there is more mental illness. And I say that because it's being caused by what's going on now, because people are home and feeling like they constantly need to have the news on all the time and the information. And what I want to plead with you is break that up. Get the information that you feel you need for where you live, and then fill your mind with more positive things, with comedy, with self-help, with meditation, with things that are good for you, because we are just getting stress and fear mongrel vibe from many of these news sources. I mean, they have a slogan, if it bleeds, it leads. So they're here to fear monger you, and we take it in as being informed. So
that's interesting. That's interesting. It reminds me of something that I saw in the Social Influence Netflix documentary that we haven't touched on. And that is that not only does the media promote fear, they also promote outrage. Why? Because outrage is what gets you clicking, it what gets you engaging, it what gets more ads being pumped into your area of awareness. So the media deliberately tries to promote outrage. So we've never had more outrage and anger, and the media is deliberately feeding that. I really recommend watching that Netflix documentary, and they talk in depth about that.
This is exactly what we're talking about. Stop and pause, because social media wants you to fight. The more you comment on something, whether it's positive or negative, the more their algorithms go crazy and they're like, great, this is a great topic. It's just like the more they talk about, it's just like earlier when they were fear with the shutting down and you heard about toilet paper going off the shelf. Anytime you saw toilet paper, you grabbed as much as you can, because they created that scarcity and that fear.
Yeah.
So this is part of the brainwashing. Most people are like, oh, yeah, I'm not in a cult, I'm not in a religion, I'm not brainwashed. But I want you to, maybe you are.
Yeah. And do you really want to be a pawn?
Right.
Do you really want to be a pawn, especially without being aware of it? Do you want the media fueling outrage and fear?
Right.
Do you want to be in control over your own mind? And everybody in the therapy world right now recognizes, how many people have called me and become clients, and I'll say, I've had anxiety, but since this COVID started, my anxiety is exponentially, I can't manage it. It's just destroying my life. Well, and then for a lot of them, you'll find out that they spend their entire day consuming media, social media, Googling different things and terrorizing themselves with facts that we don't even know are facts, because let's face it, I'm not an epidemiologist.
Right.
So it's important to realize that you want to be informed, but do you need to be informed all day? And if it's causing excessive fear, is that helpful to you? It's going to lower your immune system anyway.
Exactly. We totally got to talk again, because this is like one point brings up another. But something that I tell my client when it comes to food, because I help people just start eating cleaner food, is let's take something like Splenda, right? Splenda, if you go to their website, they're going to tell you all the benefits, why it's good for you, why you should use it. But if you do an internet search on why Splenda might be bad for you, you're going to see all of the contrasting information. And so what I tell people is look at both and then make an informed decision for yourself. So this is what we're saying. Pause before you respond to someone. Pause before you fight with someone. Pause before you post negatively or make fun of someone or feel that you're 1000% right and everyone else is an idiot. because this is part of the brainwashing that's going on right now with the media. They want you to take sides. The more we fight, the more we're divided, the more they have control of us, right? So, but the more we can come together and understand one another and be compassionate with one another, then we have what's actually truly most important to us, which is these relationships and honestly this freedom within our own mind and our own bodies, by being less stressed. Because any kind of fight is a stress, any kind of argument, any kind of disagreement, anything that makes you like grind your teeth and grumble all day, that's stress. And that's all we're getting
our energy out.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly.
We're allowing it to happen to us. We're allowing it to drain us of that energy we need.
Exactly. So this was such a great conversation, Tiffani. Tell folks how they can get a hold of you.
Well, you can visit my website at tiffanicappello.com to learn more about working with me, especially if you want to really change your mindset. You want to think differently about yourself, about your future. I work with people who come out of religious cults, as well as people struggling with anxiety, depression, lack of confidence, helping you to think differently through the power of rapid transformational therapy, hypnosis, and my online program, A Transformed Life, which is 9 weeks to totally transform your mindset so you can be free of those triggering events from the past, that negative inner self-talk, and every aspect of the mindset that's dragging you down and keeping you from living up to your full potential and having a happy life.
Nice.
So you can find out more about that program if you're a woman at transformedwomenacademy.com. I also do work with men, though, within that program.
Nice. And I'm Nicole White. You can find me at Nicole White Wellness. And I help people who have struggled their whole life with eating disorders, stress, anxiety, depression. Both Tiffani and I have similar training with RTT. Our approaches are both great. It's just whoever you resonate with and whatever you want. We're here to support each other and to support you. I also do online meditation classes. There'll be information there and a whole variety of things. So check out our websites. I'll post them. And for me personally, I just hope that you got something out of it. And honestly, if you've listened this whole time, I think we've gotten in just a little bit to help you think about your responses and to really find more of a neutral place and be open to hearing information, which may not be something that you're used to hearing or that you don't want to hear. So I personally appreciate you listening to this all the way through. All right. And I think Tiffani and I are going to do this again if she agrees. And such a great conversation. I feel it's just so wonderful. I think connection these days is just so important. And even though we can't see each other physically, we're in different states. This has been such a great conversation. So thank you, Tiffani, so much for your time. And we'll do this again.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you, everyone.